Hello, my name is Gail Seiler, and I'm honored to represent Betrayal Project USA. We are a victim led organization dedicated to exposing institutional betrayal, honoring those who were killed under the guise of public health, and pursuing justice for crimes committed under the guise of public health, and in this case, COVID-19 protocols. You can learn more about our work and view the medical crime victim stories, submit your story, or get involved by visiting our website at betrayalprojectusa.org. You can also follow us on Rumble, BitChute, YouTube, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Facebook by searching Betrayal Project USA or going to our website and clicking in from our social media. Today, I have the privilege of speaking with Linda Malito. Is that how you pronounce your last name?
Yes.
Malito? And she's going to tell us about what happened to her husband, Charles, in a Nevada hospital. But first, Linda, um, tell us about your husband.
So my husband Chuck was very athletic. He played a lot of sports in high school. He had a full ride scholarship to Nebraska, where he played football. He played in multiple bowl games. He played in the Cotton Bowl. He played in the Hula Bowl. He played in the Astro Blue Bonnet Bowl, where after that he was drafted by the Houston Oilers. He busted up his knee before the season started, so he didn't get to play professional football. But from there, he coached and taught high school throughout Texas and Nevada. He taught for Kansas Wesleyan, where he was the assistant football coach and the assistant athletic director and the track coach. And he was the assistant head coach for the Las Vegas Posse, which was a professional football team here in Las Vegas with the Canadian Football League, if you're old enough to know what that was. And he coached for them until that went bankrupt. So this picture here, when the Raiders came to Nevada and became the football team here in Las Vegas, they asked the schools to start a flag football team, and they gave the schools equipment. And my husband's girls flag football team won the championship that year, and the Raiders presented Chuck with a $10,000 check, which was for the school. But it was nice that he coached the girls, so they remained undefeated for that year. And he was still teaching when he passed away in August of 2021. This is Chuck and his brother Louie. They're both in heaven now. So that was at our wedding. And that was Chuck and I. We were on vacation. I'm pretty sure it's Cozumel. We went there to go scuba diving, which that was a fun time.
Tell us about that picture.
You love this picture?
I do love this picture.
Yeah.
It's a shoe. Tell people why we're showing a picture of a shoe.
This shoe happens to be in the Nike Museum. Nike was Chuck's sponsor from high school all the way through college. And they have this shoe of his that's, and this is the write-up they wrote about him there for the shoe in the Nike Museum in Portland, Oregon.
His shoe will live in the Nike Museum for infinity. That's great.
They have quite a lot of his stuff there. They contacted him, I think it was in 2011, and asked if he had if he still had some tracks, some other shoes, and a tracksuit and all kinds of stuff. And they bought back from him for quite a nice check. They send him to send back a bunch of Nike stuff that they have there now from
That's
back
great.
then. Yeah.
That's great. And then one more picture here.
Yeah, this was in May or June before he passed away. He went we went out to the Las Vegas NASCAR track and he got to drive a NASCAR. It was a little bit disappointing because they have a governor, I think is the term they used, on the engine, so you can't go as fast as you want to go. You can't go
Right.
faster than 150 miles an hour because otherwise, they shut your car off. But he did have a fun time going around the track in a NASCAR.
That's pretty great. So clearly, he was a healthy guy, full of life, full of
Yes.
excitement. And
Yeah.
I mean, because this is very shortly before he got sick and went in the hospital. Uh,
Yes.
Wonderful. Looks amazing. Um, so take us to the time he when he got sick. That was in August of 2021, correct?
Yes. So he started feeling, I guess, weak, it would be the correct word to use, in late July of 2021. And so he was having difficulty standing, which has nothing to do with breathing or COVID.
Right.
And the night before he went into the hospital, he'd gotten up in the middle of the night to use the restroom and he'd fallen in the bathroom. And so I had ended up sitting on the floor with him in the bathroom for 4 hours because he wasn't strong enough to get up off the floor. And I wasn't strong enough to get him up. I tried like getting a footstool and trying to get him incrementally up off the floor and tried to have him put his hand like go over me like this, and I just wasn't strong enough to get him up off the floor. And so I just sat with him. And then when he finally had enough strength to get up and go back to bed, and then on Sunday, the next night, he fell out here in the living room. And I went next door to get my neighbor to help me get him up because it was like 9 o'clock in the evening. And the neighbor just called 911, and I wasn't thinking about COVID. I wasn't thinking that they would take him. It didn't even cross my mind what was happening. I just thought, okay, um, the EMTs came and they took him. And it wasn't until I followed the EMTs to the hospital and they wouldn't let me in. I was blocked at the door that I realized, oh, and then so now I'm just stuck and I have to go home and the lady tells me uh somebody will call you tomorrow and tell you what's going on. So yes, the next morning around 11 o'clock I get a call and the lady tells me that all my husband's tests came back negative. He does not have COVID because COVID patients present with bubbling in their lungs and Chuck's lungs were clear. She said, since all your husband's tests are negative, we are sending him home and somebody will call you in a couple hours and tell you where to pull your car up and you'll get him and take him home. So that was my expectation. No one called me back that day. And the next day, around noon, maybe 1 o'clock, I don't remember exactly. I get a call from somebody else and they tell me my husband has COVID and they put him in a COVID room over in the COVID ward. And I say, he does not have COVID. I've already been told he doesn't have COVID. Well, we gave him a test. I told her those tests aren't reliable. They're not even for that. No, they're approved. Now your husband has COVID and he's in the COVID ward and blah, blah, blah. They don't tell me how to get a hold of him. I'm thinking that well, they give me a phone number, but that phone number rings to the nurse's desk, which nobody will answer. And finally, later that night, late I'm calling, somebody answers the phone and I want to know about my husband and what's going on. And they transfer me to his room and I ask Chuck, what's happening? And so he's telling me they put me in this room and they say that I have COVID. And then I tell him, you have a phone in your room. Could you call me then? Because no one answers at the nurse's station and I can't get a hold of you. So that's Monday, Tuesday, nobody calls me. I'm calling Chuck. He's telling me that he's in this room. Wednesday, somebody calls me and tells me that we're going to give your husband a liver function test, and then we're going to stick him on 4 days of remdesivir. And
Had you ever heard about remdesivir at that point before that?
no, I'd never heard of it. I Googled it, which was a mistake because, of course, Google's owned by the fifth largest drug company in the world, and all the information I got was a bunch of lies, right? Whatever
Yeah.
they wanted me to know. And
Right.
the story that I read was all about how President Trump had COVID and he was given remdesivir, and look how strong and healthy he is now, and blah, blah, blah. So I'm thinking, no one
Yeah.
told me
They
what
they
was.
use and they rode that. They used that. Well, Trump got remdesivir. He got one round of remdesivir, but he also got hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, and Regeneron. Like it
Yeah,
was,
that's
yeah,
the rest of the story, right?
right. The rest of
So
the story. Did they give you any when they said they were going to put him on 4 days of remdesivir? Did they give you any? It, did they tell you any of the side effects? Tell him any of the side effects, or
no,
all of the things that, because it's pages and pages of black box warnings. They didn't.
yeah, no. They didn't even tell us it was an experimental drug and that we had the right to say, no, you can't use that.
Right. That's what's going to be my next question. Okay, so they tell you they're going to put him on remdesivir, and then take us through that part.
So I told the lady I didn't want him to have those drugs, to have remdesivir. I wanted him to have ivermectin and budesonide. And the lady who called me said that, well, you have to talk to the doctor to have that happen. And I said, well, then let me talk to the doctor. Well, he's not here right now, and all I can do is leave a message. And of course, the other irritating thing to all of this is because it was on the phone. Every single conversation that I had, they would put somebody else on the phone, and I'd have to repeat the whole same conversation so that the two of them together, I guess, could have their stories backed up or whatever. So it's already stressful enough that all of this is going on, and then every conversation you have to have a second time with somebody else.
Right. And they won't let you in to assess the situation. So you really have no
Yes,
idea what condition he's in. Mhm.
exactly. They're just telling me a bunch of lies. And so I'm asking Chuck about, are you eating? And he's telling me, no, I've never seen a menu. I've never seen any food. No one, and he's saying, can't you call me? And again, no one told me that if I called this other number, I could ask for his room number and it would ring in his room. And
So he
so
wasn't, so he wasn't getting food. He wasn't
he
getting food.
wasn't getting food because well, finally, when he's telling me he hasn't seen any food and no one is feeding him, he's never seen a menu, I keep calling the nurse's station trying to find out. And the nurse tells me, oh, he gets food. Just think about it, ma'am. He has to take the oxygen off. He has to get a bite of food. He has to put the oxygen back on, chew his food, and then rinse and repeat. He's not going to do that. We just take the food away because he doesn't eat it. Which, who am I going to believe? Am I going to believe my husband when he's telling me I haven't seen a menu? I've never seen any food. I don't have anything to eat. So,
Right.
yeah.
And they didn't give him water or anything either. Is that correct?
Um, yeah, I don't know. We didn't really talk about the water business. We talked about food because Chuck liked to eat. Even though
It,
he was tall and skinny, he could eat a lot.
he was one of those types.
Yes, lucky him, right?
Yeah. Could eat and stay skinny. Um,
Yeah. So
so he
yeah,
wasn't getting food, and and you weren't allowed to see him. What other kind of things? So he started
no.
getting the remdesivir, and then started to decline. Is that
Yes, yes. Because he had oxygen, but you couldn't hear it. It was just like a little nose thing, and he
yeah?
could talk, and it was just there wasn't anything until they started the remdesivir, and then I could hear like this whoosh. You could hardly even have a conversation with him, and he was all tired by then, and I would just, well, let me back up. I On the fourth day of the remdesivir, a patient advocate called me and said that they're going to release him and send him to an outpatient care facility the next day, because after they gave him the 4 days of remdesivir, there wasn't anything else that they were going to do for him in the hospital. And so she was the one. I said to her, I can't ever get to him, and the nurse's station never answers their phone. And he gets upset with me when I don't call, but I can't get to his room when the nurse won't answer the phone and transfer me there. She's the one who gives me the other number that tells me just call this number and put his room number in there, and you'll go straight to his room.
Mm-hmm.
So by then, he'd been in the hospital for a week already before I find that out. And I called the ER because the ER would actually answer their phone to try and find out about him, even though he was in the COVID ward, because I was trying to get somebody to give me some information.
Right.
So I
Right.
asked this outpatient care lady, his patient representative, whatever, when she called, I said, does Chuck understand what is going to happen to him? And she says, yes, I've talked to him. And so she says, you can call and talk to him and make sure that he understands this is what's going to happen next. And she says, I'll either call you later today, or you'll get an email that tells you to what care facility he's going to be moved to tomorrow. And so I think later that night I did get an email saying that they were going to move him to someplace. But instead, the next morning, I get a call from the nurse saying that they're not going to move him that day because his oxygen saturation something, and they're going to keep him one more day, and they'll move him on Tuesday. Well, on Tuesday morning, I get a call from this doctor telling me that my husband is not going to survive, and I don't remember the word she used, but basically I said to her, so you're asking my permission to just give him drugs and kill him. That's what you're saying. And she says, well, he's not going to survive. Like, that would make it okay to go ahead
Right.
and just
Exactly.
murder him with drugs? And so I said, no, you don't have my permission, which of course then I have to repeat the whole conversation to somebody else. And so then that was on Tuesday. I try to call Chuck, but he can hardly talk now. You just hear this oxygen that they have him ongoing. Wednesday morning, they call me at around 11 and tell me, your husband's going to die today. If you want to see him, you need to come right now. And so I said, I'll be there in 5 minutes. Of course, they put all this stuff on me to let me go into his room. And of course, I still think he's in the room that I've always been calling him. But when I go to there, they've moved him someplace else, and somebody from that floor takes me down to the other floor. And of course, they try and vax me before they let me in there. And I tell the lady no.
Let's talk about that. Did they ask him if he was vaccinated?
Yes. And they asked me at the night he went in if he was vaccinated when they were holding me at the door. And I told him he's not vaxxed and I don't give you permission to vax him, and he will never give you permission to vax him.
Yeah. Did how do you think that affected his care?
Well, I'm sure if they're not gonna, I'm sure that that didn't motivate them in any way to improve his, to treat him better.
Right.
I don't know how they can treat him any worse, but yes, I'm sure
Yeah.
that that was, otherwise they wouldn't keep pushing and bringing it back
Yeah.
around.
Yeah. So
So
when you went in and you said they tried to or they wanted to vax you, what was that conversation like?
the nurse just kept saying, "Have you been vaccinated?" And I told her no, and she kept pushing. Well, you really need to do this, and I said, "No, I don't." And I said, "You will never get me to agree to be vaccinated. So just let me go see my husband." And she said, "Well, no, you really need to be vaccinated before I let you go into his room." And I said, "No, I don't." And I said, "This vax that you're pushing is no different than the mark of the beast. And they're seeing how much they can get people to submit to their lies."
Right. Exactly. So we so she and your husband, they told you your husband was going to die today, and they're spending all of that time wasting lecturing you about a vaccine, trying to get you to take the vaccine instead of being
Yes.
there with your husband in his
Yes.
final
And
hours.
so
Go
they
ahead.
put two gowns on me. They put two masks on me that you couldn't even breathe. I don't know how people wear them. You could not breathe. And so I moved it so I could try and get some fresh air. And of course, she didn't like that and made me put it back. Well, he was in a room by himself. So once I got into the room, I took the masks off and got right in bed with him. And so I was just praying for him and singing over him. And you, again, this is why they wouldn't let you in there. All of his monitors and all the beep, 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 beep that was all going off. As soon as I got in bed with him and laid my hands on him and started, all those monitors all went down, like all down. They were at a normal thing, just like this.
Yeah. Yeah. Human touch and family and that
Yes.
that's what I my husband always says one of the reasons they didn't let family in and did all those things was to strip hope from patients, and then when families were allowed, they felt that love and that hope and that calm. Yeah.
Yeah. So then when the nurse came in, she told me I could only be in there for 20 minutes. She came in and saw me in bed with him and my mask up and stuff. And she, of course, she told me to get out of the bed and to put my mask back on. And so then she started going on and on about putting him on a ventilator. And I told her, "You do not have my permission to put him on a ventilator." And she said, "Well, the breathing is," oh, I forgot an important part of the story. When I went in there and saw him for the first time since that, so that was August the 18th. He went on in on August the 8th. So in 10 days, Gail, he was an orange bag of bones.
Oh my gosh. Because no food in 10 days.
No food. He was orange, which you know darn well, which remdesivir destroyed
Yeah.
his kidneys and his
Yeah.
livers. So the
Yeah.
reason he couldn't breathe is because all that liquid filled up his lungs. That's the only
Yeah.
reason he couldn't breathe.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. What else did you notice when you went in?
Um, just the isolation of it. It just and like he was telling me, I have to pee, I have to pee. There's no place around in the room that he could go. And so I went out to the nurse's stations and told her he has to pee. So why is he in that room without one of those little bottles so that
Yeah.
he can pee? So I
Yeah.
went out there and got the just the basic thing that he needed.
Yeah. So he's still talking at this point and alert, like,
Yes. Yes. And so she clearly heard me, and she repeated when I was saying, no, you can't put him on a ventilator. He said, no, you can't put me on a ventilator. And she says, do you understand that your breathing, the worse it gets, it's going to put stress on your organs, and that you will have a heart attack and die if you do not allow us to put you on a ventilator. And I said, yes, I understand that. And I said to Chuck, Chuck, you understand what she's saying to you about the ventilator? And if you don't have one, the whole heart attack. And she said, and we will not resuscitate you if that happens. She stood right there at the foot of his bed and said that. And I said, Chuck, do you understand what she's saying? And she said, yeah. He says, yes, I understand. And so I repeated to her, you've heard from him and you've heard from me. You may not put him on a ventilator.
so was he a do not resuscitate when he went in?
Yes, he'd
Okay.
had that for a long time.
Yeah. Okay. And some people, that's, you know, my husband is the same way. He's
Yeah.
like, oh,
And of course, he wanted all of his organs donated and his skin and all that, which of course they wouldn't do
um,
because of COVID. Yeah, right.
so, right. So so he's starting to decline. Were you, did they, so did they make you leave then, or how did,
Yeah, they let me stay about 40 minutes, even though they'd originally said 20. I got to stay in there about 40
oh,
minutes.
a
And
whole
we,
40 minutes when your husband's
yeah, yeah,
that's cruel. That's very cruel.
yes.
Because what is so magical about all the other hours? You're in there for 40 minutes. What would something terrible happen like if you stayed all day?
I know, exactly. And I said to her, especially when she comes in and sees me in bed with him and she tells me to get out, I tell her, I was in bed with him for days before you people got your hands on him.
Yeah, right. In the same, you drove in the same car, right? No, you no, he went in the ambulance, but still, you, yeah. I mean, so when you, so when you went, when they had you leave, he was talking, he was making
Yes,
decisions, he was.
yes.
Tell us what happened then.
So then I just put my arm around him and I kissed him and I said, just I call your destiny forth. And I just say, you're going to fight this and you're going to come home to me. And we're just going to declare that in the name of Jesus. And so I went out and she was taking all the stuff off to me and telling me I needed to get vaxxed.
Wow.
I just told her to stop.
Again, again with the backs.
Yes. Well, I find out later that all those nurses were making bank after
Yeah,
they were making money
sure, a lot of
vaccine
it.
people.
Yeah, yeah. There was big money in that.
Yep.
And so then you went home. When was the next time you heard from them?
So The next time I heard was about 1 o'clock in the morning on the 19th. A man called and said that we just put your husband on a ventilator. And I said, you didn't have permission to do that. And he says, well, your husband asked for it, which I don't believe, but that
Right.
was their story.
Right. And of course you don't have all the medical records yet because they only sent you 100 and
Well,
some pages.
yeah,
You
I
should have
think
thousands. Yeah, you should
it
have
should. Yeah, no, I think there might be 200. There's a lot of them, but not.
gathered 200 for that amount of time, and they vented him. You,
Yeah.
anything less than 1,000, I'd have to question.
Okay. Well, yeah. They, they know that we don't know, and we don't know the right
Yeah,
questions. The other thing that makes me mad is he always wore a gold cross on
yeah,
this
like this
gold
one,
chain, and
like
someone
this one.
stole that. Yeah, in the hospital, somebody stole that. I got the chain back, but the cross was gone.
Who the heck would do that? That's terrible. That's terrible. So they vented him, and then what happened?
Then somebody called me around 8 or 9 that morning, and they wanted to comfort care him. And I told them no.
So they wanted to
So,
euthanize him, basically.
yes, exactly. They wanted to euthanize him. And they said, I don't know why you won't do it. He's not going to survive. And I said, you are not going to drug my husband to death for
Yeah.
your convenience.
Yeah.
And so then they put somebody else on the phone, and I had to have the same conversation with them. And so she says to me, well, all right, we'll do everything we can to save your husband. And I said, that's exactly what I'm telling you that I want.
Hmm.
So then about an hour later, somebody else calls and says to me, where do you want the body to go? Just like that. Where do you want us to send the body?
Wow. That's so cold.
Yeah. So I just said, I'll call you back. And then a few minutes later, somebody else calls and says, you have to come and get all of his stuff before he dies. We can't have it here after he passes. And I said, I'll call you back up
Yeah.
again. I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Did they let you back in
So
the
I
room
called,
before? Go ahead.
what?
Did they let you back in the room before he died or after?
Neither.
Neither.
When when they called me at the last time, well, the second to the last time anyone called me, and told me that his legs and his arms were purple and that he couldn't breathe and they couldn't find a pulse and blah blah, and they wanted to give him Ativan and morphine, I think, just to, because he wasn't going to survive. That was at 5 minutes to 6 on the 19th of August, 2021. And I, they asked, did I want to see him? And I said, well, can I be in the room with him? And they tell me no. I have to watch through the little square in the door.
What?
And I said, what's the point of that?
Yeah, you were just in there. Like they wouldn't even let you in to hold his hand and give him hope,
No.
and he's on a ventilator already. So
Yes.
that's a closed air system anyway. So there should have been no excuse for them to not let you in. They let
Yes.
you in before he was on a ventilator the day before. Um,
Yes. So I talked to him throughout the day because she would put the phone by his ear. So even
mhm,
though he couldn't talk, he could hear me.
mhm.
Well, at least she said. If
Yeah.
he could hear over the ventilator, I don't know. But
Uh, Most of our survivors who had been vented have said that they could hear and that they were aware of when people were there. They knew when their loved ones were there. So there's hope for that, that you could hear.
yeah,
Um, so so you would talk to him, not with him, but to him a couple
yes.
times. And then what happened?
So then some coaches and PE teachers that he taught with came to the house and they were with me. She called me then that night at I think it was 6:35 and told me that my husband had passed away at 6:25 that night.
And you were not allowed to go in after or before?
I never saw him again after that. I'll see him in heaven someday, but after that. So
Right.
the last image I have of him is the orange bag of bones.
I'm so sorry. Tell people, a lot of people don't believe that this is happening, but um, tell people some of the impacts that this has had on your life.
Um, well, he and I were both school teachers, and we had planned to both retire at the end of the next school year and just travel and do fun stuff. And so I was just going to keep teaching because now I was all by myself, but the kids were really bad after spending the year before COVID at home and that whole nonsense. And not only were the kids bad, their parents weren't any better. And so I realized that I didn't really have to teach anymore. And I didn't want these junior high school kids telling me, F you, Mrs. Malito. So
Yeah.
I went ahead and retired. And so this, it's not what I expected my life was going to be at this phase, you
Right.
know,
For
but
sure.
there's that. And the the physical part of it, I've had some health challenges. The sleeplessness has been really hard. My hair fell out.
Mm,
There was a lot of unexpected consequences that you don't even think about.
yeah.
And
Exactly.
I'd go in the store and see stuff that I'd always buy for him in the grocery store and start bawling.
Yeah. That ambush grief, right? That hits you.
Yeah.
Um, did you did you know, like, or have a sense right away that the hospital had killed him, or that things weren't quite right, or did that take you a while?
No, I realized right away once when in 24 hours from the remdesivir to the whole decline thing, then I started doing a deeper dive in the whole
Mhm.
remdesivir nonsense and
Right.
find out, yeah. So I realized I realized while it was happening, because I started doing, once the I spoke to the doctor, this was in the middle of the remdesivir time slot. So he might
Mhm.
have called me on Sunday or Monday, I'm not really sure. And he was rude to me about the the ivermectin and the budesonide, and telling me, "You're not a doctor. How do you know about these drugs? And we don't use those there." So
Right.
I started calling around to attorneys trying to find an attorney. And so the attorneys put me on to, there was some attorney in New York, I think, to a doctor here in Nevada that would do the ivermectin and budesonide,
Yeah.
but she didn't have privileges at
At that.
Centennial Hills Hospital, and so she could only give them to him if I could get him out, which I couldn't get him out, and there, even my own attorney wouldn't help me to get him out. Well, in the eyes of the law, he's in the hospital, which is the best place he's supposed to be. So you don't have a leg to stand on. Blah blah blah.
Mhm. So then afterwards, did you did you try reaching out to attorneys afterwards? Because a lot of times people are like, "Well, if all this happened, why don't you just sue?" Like, as if it's that easy, right?
Yes, and I did have two attorneys. One lady specifically, I can't think of her name right now. She was trying. She 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 already had a lawsuit in, that was working its way through the courts, not against Centennial Hills, but against Mountain Hospital, which is down the freeway a little while.
Mhm.
And so, since she already had one for a lady whose husband, or I guess it was the husband and whose wife had been treated the way Chuck had been treated, so she was took on my case, and she was, well, it ended up that the Nevada Supreme Court has blocked remdesivir and uh, malpractice lawsuit for this stuff, and so
Yep.
it didn't go anywhere. I know that there's some lawsuits in 7 other states that are working their way through. It only takes one. We only
That's
need
the
one.
that's the AG. That was the attorney general effort, to get the attorney generals to do something like sit a grand jury or whatever. And so those seven they rejected.
All
They're
7 of them.
Yeah, one of them was in Texas, and our attorney
Yeah.
general didn't do it either. So yeah, all seven.
Because I thought the one in Missouri probably would be able to get through.
No, no, I thought the one in Texas would be able to get through,
Mm,
but
yeah,
no, no bueno on that. Didn't happen, and so the attorney generals have let us down. But they're trying some other things. I'm in contact with Paul on those. They're trying some other things. There is a case in New York that is still in the Supreme Court as of now. So this is April of 2026. It is a case against um, Ralph Barrick and the creators of COVID, the ones that manufactured it,
uh,
and so
okay.
it is for that particular, and that is in the Supreme Court. I don't know if they'll win or not, but um, that would be big if they did. And then, of course, the Gray Share case, which didn't was a civil case in Wisconsin, which the jury came back
Yeah,
and ruled against them. But I think that has a lot to do with the fact that the general population doesn't understand that it wasn't COVID that killed people. It was the protocols, and it was
yeah,
the response to it, and those types of things. And so, getting educating the public matters. right? And
Yes.
so that's what these stories are, people coming and telling their stories on this podcast and other podcasts makes a huge difference because we get the story out there and the truth out there. It's important that the that the truth be out. A lot of people think their loved one died of COVID, and that's why we always say loved one died of COVID. Are you sure? Get the medical records. Get the medical records and
Mm-hmm.
check out our. We have the deadly hospital deadly playbook. The 25 tactics that they used on thousands and thousands of people. 1.6 million, in fact, people they use that on, and so we tell people read that, and if you recognize what you're looking at when if you recognize those things having happened, and almost everybody will say, oh yes, I was isolated, all of these things happened to me, and so then they need to tell their stories. So
Yes.
um anything else that you want to tell people that might have gone through the same thing and are thinking, did it, oftentimes it's like people are like, did they kill my loved one, or should I tell my story? What would you say to
Well,
that?
I would say yes, they killed your loved ones, and yes, you need to tell your story because they deserve a voice. And though it's hard, they still need a voice.
Yeah.
They're a victim of a crime and they deserve justice. And until we band together and say somebody needs to listen to this,
Yeah.
these people murdered people for a lie, for a phony agenda, and to line their pockets.
Yeah. Yeah. It was profits over patients. It was murder for money, hospital homicide for money. And the reality is, put this in a different scenario, put it outside of the hospital. If somebody had killed your loved one for money, shot him at a gas station to rob him for money, and never brought to justice, the entire town would be like, we won't, justice for Charles. We won't stop, right? And so,
Yeah.
yeah, and so it's true. It's a crime, and it needs to be prosecuted. Um, so tell us your one of your favorite memories of your husband.
Boy, my favorite memory. It it was fun to travel with him. It was, of course, always when you go someplace to begin with, it's nerve wracking. But once you're there, he knew that my favorite or my dream vacation was to go to Italy. And so we went to Italy, France, and Spain. And it was so much fun because Malito is an Italian name, right? And so there's a Malito, Italy, and we went to to Italy and spent so much time just going around to all these different places. And he took me up to Venice on the train, and we went to Naples, and that's probably a really fun time that we had together. So that and a funny story is a different time when he used to call me Mrs. We didn't call each other honey or sweetheart or like that. He would say Mrs. or my missus, and I would call him Mr. That was our pet names. And so he was in the hospital, and the anesthesiologist, this woman, was talking to him and telling him this was before he got sick, years before. And he's just laying there, and I said, Mister, are you listening? The anesthesiologist says to me, what are you doing in this room? Because I called him Mister. She thought I didn't know who he was. And so we got a kick out of that, laughing.
she thought you were some like just a
Just,
stranger going,
yeah,
"Hey, cutting
standing
in."
in his bed.
Yeah. Oh, oh, I'm very sorry about what happened to your husband, and I
Thank you.
want to say I appreciate the moral courage in telling his story and speaking on his behalf. And you're right, you'll certainly will meet again in heaven, and that is important to remember. Um, but we seek justice because we do believe that God is the author of life and death, and that nobody has the right to take even 1 minute of somebody's precious life. So we will continue to fight and continue to make sure that he is remembered and that his story gets out there. And we would appreciate it if everybody would absolutely share this story. And if you have a loved one who you believe was killed in the hospital, either by protocols or hospice, the hospice murders that we're now doing, or any type of medical crime, including uh, including the shots, we would hope that people would come and tell their story on our platform and let your voice be heard and join us, because we believe justice starts with recognition. And
Yes.
in order for the world to recognize, they need to hear the stories en masse. So thank you very much.